Hi, I'm a possum and I find garbage, and today's garbage is Wonder Woman 1984. This is one of my unstructured reviews, with no script or anything. It's audio only. So I kind of live tweeted my reaction to the movie as I was watching it, and I wrote like a more than 100 tweet thread about it, just detailing, whatever I was observing or whatever. At some point, I was basically just using it as like notes for a potential future review, which I may or may not actually end up making. Anyway, so the movie kind of starts with like a prologue where Wonder Woman's a kid, and she's like, she goes to this arena, and for some reason they have all these Amazonians like doing these tricks and stuff, all these events, like flips and throwing stuff. And they're all doing it at the same time, and there's an audience there. So it's almost like if you went to the Olympics and they had every game going on at the same time, which is kind of stupid, but that's not all that important. But the point is, Wonder Woman, as a kid, she's there to compete in some event, like some kind of obstacle course, where she has to run, do a bunch of tricks, and then get on a horse and shoot arrows through stuff, right? And for some reason, she's the only kid competing. Like, all the people she's competing against are, like, grown adult women, right? And it's not really explained. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess the idea is to just show how great she is, that she can, compete with, people who are much more experienced than herself. But the way I'm describing it now makes it sound like she's some kind of colossal Mary Sue. But, there you go, that's what happens. But anyway, so she's like running this obstacle course. At some point she's on a horse and she's supposed to like shoot arrows through these little hoop things. And when you shoot your thing, it sends off a smoke, like a colored smoke flare that the scorekeeper uses to like tell, whether or not you're doing it right. Because, they're like way out away from the arena at this point, so nobody can watch them. But Wonder Woman, at some point, she falls off her horse, and then it like runs ahead of her. So she finds a conveniently placed, I guess it's like a drain pipe or something. So she slides down the drain pipe and ends up in front of her horse. So she catches up to it, gets on it, and she finds herself way out in front ahead of the other racers. And but she ends up missing one of the ring things she's supposed to shoot. So when she gets to the finish line, her mentor lady, whatever her name is, stops her, and she basically ends up disqualified for cheating. And her mentor lady lectures her about like the value of truth and not taking the short path to greatness and other such crap. So then we flash forward to the year 1984, where the bulk of the movie takes place. And we see like this kind of montage where Wonder Woman just kind of going around rescuing people, and it's executed in such a way that comes across like kind of cheesy and cartoonish. But I think it was intentional because they're kind of like going for the same tone as like those old Superman movies from the 70s. I think they are anyway. Anyway, this culminates with like a heist at a jewelry store at a shopping mall. So these crooks go into this jewelry store, and they tell the lady there they know that it's a front for some black market, like they're selling like stolen artifacts or something. So they pull out their guns and threaten the lady, and they go into the back room and start stealing stuff. And then as they're leaving, one of the crooks drops his gun. A woman sees it and screams, and this causes a big panic, and the police show up. And this one crook, he grabs a little kid, a little girl, and dangles her over a balcony, threatening to drop her to get them to back off. But then Wonder Woman comes swinging in on her lasso like Tarzan, and ties him up and, rescues the kid. And, it's a big action scene, like she beats up all the crooks and stuff. And she causes a ton of property damage, because she takes off her tiara thing and throws it like a boomerang and like smashes all the security cameras, because for some reason she's like trying to keep her existence a secret, even though there's like hundreds of witnesses around. And then she has the crooks all tied up, and she just drops them onto a police car from like high enough that she completely caves the roof of the car in. Of course, somehow these guys are totally fine. They're not injured or anything. So she's like, she caused like thousands of dollars in property damage to stop these guys from stealing like, what, a couple $1,000s worth of jewelry or something? It's like Powerpuff Girls logic. So later that night, we see Wonder Woman go to her apartment or penthouse or whatever it is. We see a bunch of like World War I photos. Then she like screws around downtown in her street clothes and sees an airplane flying around, which I guess reminds her of Chris Pine's character from the first movie because he was like a pilot. So we cut to this building, which I guess is supposed to be like the Smithsonian or some museum or something in Washington, D.C. The whole movie takes place in Washington, D.C. And we see this nerdy lady played by Kirsten Wiig named Barbara. She's like walking by, she drops her papers, and then these two dudes just like walk right past her and don't help her because, you know, men bad. So Wonder Woman shows up and helps her because she's just there for some reason. And Barbara asks her if she wants to go get lunch, but, you know, Wonder Woman basically tells her no. Then Barbara's boss lady comes walking up and tells her that, about the jewelry heist and the FBI. They're gonna bring some unidentified artifacts to Barbara so she can help identify them. And now this has Wonder Woman's attention. So later, Wonder Woman shows up to bother her while she's looking at the stuff the FBI gave her, and among them is this crystal thing with like Latin writing written on this metal ring around it. And like Wonder Woman, she speaks like every language conceivable. I guess that's one of her powers. I don't know anything about the comics, but I think that might have been established in the first movie, which I barely remember. So she translates the inscription on this ring that's on the crystal. It says something about granting wishes. Like if you're holding the crystal, you're like touching it, and you make a wish, it will come true. None of them believe that it's actually going to be, you know, granting the wishes, but it kind of gets them like talking about like what they wish for. So Wonder Woman, I guess she kind of like silently wishes to herself that she wants Chris Pine to come back to life, because even though it's been 70 years and she's immortal, you know, she's functionally immortal, she's still, you know, pining after Chris Pine. So while she's like screwing around with the crystal, it kind of cuts to Wonder Woman's apartment, and we see Chris Pine's watch on her shelf or whatever it is, like start ticking or whatever while the whimsical music swells up. So you know, magical shenanigans are about to happen. And then later that night, like Barbara and Wonder Woman agree to have dinner together. So at dinner, her and Barbara kind of suck each other's metaphorical with back and forth compliments. And Wonder Woman kind of tells her about like this dude she used to know. Like she's talking about Chris Pine, but she doesn't like refer to him by name. She just says, "Oh, I had a boyfriend once, but he died." You know, that sort of thing. But then like later we see Barbara walking somewhere in the middle of the night. She's walking through a park by herself in the middle of the night. She walks past this guy who starts like, you know, harassing her and tries to grab her and stuff because, you know, men bad. And then Wonder Woman shows up and like beats up the evil, disgusting male and saves Barbara. So then Barbara goes back to her laboratory and picks up the crystal and wishes she could be quote, strong, sexy, cool, special, like Wonder Woman. So the next morning, Boss Lady introduces Barbara to our villain, Mr. Lord, who's like a rich oil tycoon guy. Who, he's trying to make himself look rich, but it's a plot thing. So he wants to tour the facility, and he sees while Barbara's showing him around, he sees the crystal sitting on her desk, and looks at it like he knows what it is. So you know he's up to no good. Anyway, Barbara introduces Mr. Lord to Wonder Woman. The whole time they're talking, Wonder Woman's doing this kind of like fake smile while they're talking. Like it comes across like a fake smile. I don't know if it's supposed to be or if that's just Gal Gadot's bad acting. I don't even know if I said her name right, and I don't care if I mispronounced it. But anyway, you kind of get the sense that she's thinking this guy's an asshole. She's kind of like smiling her way through the conversation. So anyway, later Mr. Lord goes back to his office, and he gets pissed off looking at these bills that all say past due on them. He realizes his kid is there. You know, his kid looks nothing like him. I guess he's supposed to be adopted or something, but his kid is there, and he has him for the weekend, I guess to imply he's divorced or whatever. And he ends up running into this investor named Simon, who's really pissed off at him because he's like running the business into the ground. And Simon tells him he's got 48 hours to pay him back, right? So back at the lab, Wonder Woman realizes the crystal's missing. And we cut to Barbara trying on, outfits at the clothing store. And Wonder Woman showing up at this party where Mr. Lord is. I guess she's like looking for him or looking for Barbara, or whatever. She's looking for whoever has the stone, I guess. The thing is, like, when this happened, I guess I missed a line or something, because I don't remember anyone mentioning a party. So, I don't know, everyone just kind of shows up at this party. Barbara runs into Mr. Lord at the party, and he asks her if he wants to, if she wants to go to her office or whatever, so they can, make out or whatever. And, but he's really planning to just steal the crystal. So, they're like in her office making out. He kind of grabs the crystal and like slips it into his pocket while she's not looking. And then Wonder Woman, she's like she's running around all over looking for Barbara, and this dude is just following her around, right? And she gets like annoyed and tells him to piss off. But then he says, "I wish we had more time," which I guess was like a big romantic line that Chris Pine had in the first movie that I don't remember. But anyway, he says that, and this kind of gets her attention. So then the camera kind of like spins around, and the guy kind of turns into Chris Pine. This is what she wished for. She used the magic crystal thing, not knowing that her wish would come true, and then ended up wishing Chris Pine back into existence. I guess we see Chris Pine and Wonder Woman walking along, and Chris Pine kind of I don't even remember his character's name. I think it was like Steve or something. So anyway, Chris Pine is walking. They're all walking down the street, and he explains that he doesn't remember anything after his plane blew up in the first movie. He just kind of like woke up on some dude's futon somewhere. So he takes Wonder Woman back to his the apartment that he woke up in, and it becomes apparent that he just kind of took over the body of some guy, right? Like when Wonder Woman wished him back to life, I guess his soul went into this dude's body. I guess this dude's apartment just kind of became Chris Pine's apartment, and he's like living there, right? And so when Chris Pine sees himself in the mirror, he sees the face of the dude the body he's inhabiting. But when Wonder Woman looks at him, she sees Chris Pine. Like he looks like Chris Pine to her, but I guess to the world, he looks like this other dude. And by the way, the dude that he's possessing doesn't get a name. He's just referred to as Handsome Man in the credits. That tells you how unimportant this guy is. I guess Mr. Lord, we cut to Mr. Lord taking the crystal back to his office, and he wishes to become the stone itself, right? And the way he phrases it, that wish could have gone horribly, horribly wrong. But essentially, he gives himself the powers, like the wish-granting powers of the crystal, and essentially turns himself into the villain from the Wishmaster movies. Anyway, we then see Barbara waking up, and she goes to her kitchen and accidentally rips the door off her refrigerator with her new super strength. Because remember, she wished herself to be like Wonder Woman, so now she's gonna start realizing she has Wonder Woman's powers. We cut back to Chris Pine's apartment, and we see Wonder Woman wake up in bed next to Chris Pine, and he's not wearing a shirt. So it's implied that they had sex that night. Wonder Woman says, "I should probably go and figure out how a stone brought my boyfriend back in someone else's body." So they basically use this body as a conduit to have sex without the dude's consent, right? Because you think about it, like, this guy did not consent to have Chris Pine and possess him, as far as we know. So this is equivalent to Wonder Woman having sex with an unconscious man. She raped him. And Wonder Woman doesn't seem to care at all that some poor guy essentially had his life taken from him while her boyfriend is in his body. The moral implications don't even occur to her. This guy is so disposable, and it doesn't matter, because our hero just needs a body for her boyfriend so they can have sex. And the fact that neither Wonder Woman or Chris Pine are bothered by the implications tells me that writer/director Patty Jenkins thinks this is moral and okay, right? I can't be the only one who thinks this is completely messed up, right? Anyway, so after the movie just glosses over the fact that Wonder Woman raped a dude, we cut to Barbara at the gym lifting heavier and heavier weights while all the muscly dudes around her just stare in awe. You know, there's girl power. Mr. Lord goes to Simon and kind of tricks him into wishing for something. Suddenly, the government guys show up and arrest Simon for tax crimes. Because the way the wishing thing works, it's kind of like monkey's paw logic, where if you make a wish, whatever you get will kind of come with a trade-off. So when Mr. Lord gave himself the wishing powers of the crystal, he also gave himself the power to take anything he wants from anyone, you know, while granting their wish. So if you wish for a car or something, he can just take from you whatever he wants in exchange for it, right? So basically, he uses this when he tricks Simon into making a wish. He basically steals his company from him. So we cut back to Wonder Woman and Chris Pine, and Chris Pine, he's from the 1910s, so he doesn't understand 80s fashion. So we get one of these cliche comical montages where one character tries on a bunch of different outfits while another character disapproves of each one. This movie was made this year. Wonder Woman shows Chris Pine around the town, and he marvels at all the modern stuff like escalators and subway trains and mohawks. And for some reason, the background music during the scene is Voce Sapete by Mozart. And it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. I don't know why this is the song they chose. You would think they would pick some kind of classic 80s synth pop song or something. Since it takes place in 1984, why even make it take place in the 80s? So Mr. Lord goes back to his office. His secretary tells him that all their oil wells have struck oil. Then Wonder Woman and Chris Pine go to Barbara and ask her about the crystal, and she says she let Mr. Lord borrow the crystal, even though we blatantly saw him steal it when he slipped it into his pocket. But I guess now the movie's telling us that Barbara let him take it. I don't know. So Wonder Woman and Chris Pine break into Mr. Lord's building and find the ring that was around the crystal before, but the crystal itself is gone. So since the crystal is gone, Wonder Woman can see the inscription on the inside of the ring, and it's written in some god language. She calls up Barbara and tells her to find out where the crystal came from. Wonder Woman realizes the crystal is some kind of magical artifact and doesn't know what it does yet. But they also find a plane ticket in Mr. Lord's office and find out that he's going to Cairo. And since Chris Pine doesn't have a passport, they decide that they should just steal a jet so they can fly there themselves. Okay, now I remind you, to everyone except for Wonder Woman, Chris Pine looks like this other dude whose life he's basically stolen at this point, right? So to the entire rest of the world, he looks like this guy. I would think that this guy, he's a grown man, right? You tell me this guy doesn't have a passport that they can just use to get on an airplane and fly to Cairo? So instead of just going back to Chris Pine's apartment to find this guy's passport so they could, go to an airport and fly to Cairo, they decide to go steal a fighter jet from some nearby Air Force base. And I got a little bit confused at first because this fighter jet doesn't really resemble any fighter jet that I'm aware of and that exists in real life, because the cockpit has the two seats side by side like a passenger jet. But as far as I'm aware, every fighter jet that exists has the seats one in front of the other. I don't know. I could be wrong. There could be a fighter jet that looks like this one, but I'm not aware of any. So that kind of confused me for a second. So they steal this fighter jet, and as they're taking off, the military guys are alerted of the unauthorized takeoff, so they start chasing them on the runway, trying to stop them from taking off. Wonder Woman realizes that they're not going to be able to avoid the radar, so she rubs her hands together, and just out of nowhere, she suddenly has the power to just touch the airplane, the fighter jet, and turn it invisible. This ability comes out of nowhere. So it turns the airplane invisible, which also makes it invisible to radar somehow. And they fly away. And there's all these fireworks going off because it also just happens to be the 4th of July during all this. So there's fireworks going off, so it's all pretty sparkly. The romantic music starts up. I could show you the world, all that crap. That's that type of scene. It was meant to be whimsical and magical. They're all smiling. It's so stupid for a number of reasons. Okay, how the hell does Chris Pine know how to fly a fighter jet? He was a World War I pilot. He would have been flying like a biplane. A biplane from like the 1910s. That doesn't translate to flying a computerized fighter jet that can fly faster than sound. But I guess he just somehow knows how to fly a fighter jet. Whatever. So we see Barbara like in a room in the building where she works doing something. I don't even remember what she was doing. But then she gets up and runs down the street. And almost literally every single man she runs past catcalls her as she's running. Because, men bad. And she happens to run past the guy who tried to grab her in the park earlier, and he's very clearly drunk. So she just beats the crap out of this guy, throws him up against a van and, smashes it up, kicks him into the street, gets him all bloody, knocks him out, almost kills him, basically. She runs off and goes to do something, and then we see Mr. Lord meeting up with some Arab prince guy or king or something in Cairo. And he tricks him into making a wish. The guy wishes for the quote-unquote heathens to be expelled from his land. So Mr. Lord says he'll take his oil in exchange, but then this prince guy tells him that he already sold all of his oil. So instead, Mr. Lord takes his bodyguards, and then this giant wall just springs up around the town. I guess Wonder Woman and Chris Pine, they somehow flew this plane all the way to Cairo, this fighter jet, all the way across the frickin' Atlantic Ocean. The next thing we know, they're in a taxi driving through, Egypt or whatever, and they just happen to see, Mr. Lord in another car that they've passed by. So they actually buy the taxi from the driver. I guess just Wonder Woman just happened to have a huge wad of money with her. So they buy this guy's car, and then they follow him. And Mr. Lord realizes they're following them. So he tells the bodyguards, who are now under his mind control, essentially, to run them off the road and shoot them and get rid of them and stuff, right? So the guards are shooting at them, so Wonder Woman gets out of the car and runs faster than their trucks to catch up to them. And she reaches into one of them and rips the steering wheel off. And as they're shooting at them, a bullet flies past Wonder Woman, and it's in slow motion, right? It's about to hit Chris Pine right in the face, but Wonder Woman, she takes her lasso and whips it behind her, and it actually wraps around the bullet in mid-flight, and she flings it so hard at one of the trucks that it bursts one of the tires. I actually started laughing out loud when this happened. It's stupid because if she could do that, why doesn't she just do that sort of thing all the time? What are the limits of Wonder Woman's abilities? Is what I start to wonder at this point in the movie. I guess during the chase, Wonder Woman gets on the hood of Mr. Lord's car and asks him where the stone is, and he says he is the stone. He says something like, "Oh, you're looking at it." So, action movie stuff happens, and Chris Pine drives an armored truck between these two other armored trucks to stop them from crushing Wonder Woman. He just knows how to drive this armored truck somehow. We see these kids playing in the street, up in the road ahead, because of course there's kids playing in the street. So Chris Pine fires a rocket from the side rocket launcher thing on this armored truck thing he's driving, and he just somehow knows how to operate that thing too. So he launches a rocket, and then Wonder Woman lassos the rocket. She lassos the rocket and uses it to fly to the kids. I burst out laughing. It's like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. So she lassos the rocket, flies over to the kids. She picks the kids up because they're too stupid to just run out of the way. So she picks the kids up, and I guess she lassos like a lamppost or something. I don't remember what it was. She tries to swing out of the road, but somehow she loses her grip on the magic lasso and just falls into the street. But it's fine because Chris Pine manages to stop the truck like on a dime right in front of her. He manages to stop this like 20-ton war vehicle like on a dime, even though they're going down the street like 100 miles an hour. Inertia, what's that? I don't know how she lost her grip on the lasso. The kids are not too heavy for her, right? Wonder Woman, like literally less than a minute ago, she was pushing a truck like sideways down the street, like against the direction the wheels would turn. She's pushing a truck down the street. At one point, she gets under a truck and basically flips it upside down. She pushes it up, throws it into the air. So she's strong enough to carry a couple kids while swinging from the lasso. So I don't even know how she lost her grip on it. So this is the movie's midpoint action scene. It's about 80 minutes in, I guess. And it should be noted that this is like the first big action scene in the movie since the mall fight at the beginning, which is like more than an hour ago. You got your big dumb action hero, like action movie. This is like an hour goes by without any like real action or fight scenes. You got a scene of like a super strong woman beating up a drunk dude in the street. And you got like a chase at a military base that lasted like 30 seconds and nobody got hurt. That's about it. So anyway, Mr. Lord got away from, when Wonder Woman and Chris Pine when they were chasing him. And we see some TV news guy say that the big wall that magically popped up around Cairo is cutting off all the poor people in town from their water supply. And now Mr. Lord has somehow taken over control of half the world's oil reserves. So I guess now that we're 87 minutes into the movie, we finally have some stakes. Like Wonder Woman and Chris Pine, before this point, they don't even know what's going on. They don't know, they're not even sure why the stone is important. They just know it's like some kind of, magical artifact. They don't know what it does. They don't know what the danger is. But I guess now we finally have some stakes, halfway through the movie. And actually, come to think of it, the fact that these poor people are being cut off from their water supply is never even brought up again. So, Wonder Woman calls Barbara, and she explains that the stone has been seen all over the world throughout history, but doesn't know where it originated. But she says she's planning to meet with some guy who happens to know about it. It's never explained how she found out about this guy. I guess it's not that important, but... Anyway, the next day we see Barbara go to the guy's hideout, and Wonder Woman and Chris Pine just kind of show up. Like, I guess they came back from Cairo, whatever. They just kind of show up. I guess they all go into this guy's little hideout. I guess he's like a descendant of the Mayans or something. And he shows them this book written in like ancient Mayan glyphs, which of course Wonder Woman can read. This is a little bit of a nitpick, but something about this book, it doesn't look like an ancient Mayan book. It looks like a Bible, the way it's like shaped and the way it opens and the pages turn and stuff. It doesn't look like a Mayan style book. I guess it could just be a modern book about the Mayans, but if that were the case, then I would think it would have like translations in it, because there's like 5 people in the world today who speak ancient Mayan. Anyway, it's not important. So it turns out that the wish-granting crystal was given to humans by some kind of evil Mayan trickster god, and they've realized it does like monkey's paw type stuff, where it grants your wishes but at a huge cost. And the movie explains that this is how the Mayan civilization collapsed. No, it wasn't the conquistadors or anything, it was this magic rock. So in order to keep your wish, you have to give up whatever is most precious to you, or renounce your wish in order to keep bad stuff from happening. So Barbara refuses to renounce her wish and kind of just disappears while no one's looking at her. So anyway, back at Mr. Lord's office, we get a montage of him bringing powerful business leaders in and getting them to wish for stuff so you can use the rules of the stone to take their stuff. When you think about it, it kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because this guy is, over the course of like 2 or 3 days, he's kind of become like the richest and most powerful person in the world, right? So you would think that all these rich and powerful business leaders would think that you'd think they would be suspicious that he was doing something that they perhaps don't want to be involved in, right? So, I don't know. Anyway, Mr. Lord, he's like coughing and his ears are bleeding. I guess in this scene we find out that he can only grant one wish per person, right? So Mr. Lord's kid comes in and wishes for his father to have greatness. Like he tries to stop his kid from making a wish, but it ends up making a wish. Anyway, he goes to one of his employees and tries to get him to wish for, him to have an audience with the president, but he already granted this dude a wish the previous day. And, just details, whatever, who cares? So there's all this chaos going around in the streets because Mr. Lord has been granting wishes to everyone in town. So there's just all kinds of crazy stuff going on. This one dude wished for a farm. And so now there's like cows just running around all over the park or whatever. Back at Wonder Woman's apartment, Chris Pine tries to talk Wonder Woman into rescinding her wish for him to come back to life before something bad happens, but she refuses because obviously that would mean he would die again. Wonder Woman uses her magic lasso thing to show Chris Pine a flashback to when her island of Amazonians was attacked by filthy, nasty men back in ancient times. And this hero lady sacrificed herself or something, tried to, save the Amazonians. But then we see Mr. Lord's car. They see Mr. Lord's car headed to the White House on TV. Like it's purely coincidence that they happen to have the TV on, and it's turned to the right channel, the right news channel, which just happens to be showing Mr. Lord's car headed toward the White House at that particular moment in time. So Wonder Woman and Chris Pine decide they gotta go to the White House. And there just happens to be this dude there who Wonder Woman happens to know, so they can just walk right in. But they're too late to stop, Mr. Lord from getting the president to wish for more nukes so that they can have leverage against the Russians. Because remember, it's the 80s and the Cold War is still going on. So, he basically tricks the president into, wishing for nukes. And in exchange, Mr. Lord takes all the president's power and authority for himself and makes himself immune to all laws, even though the president can't do that. Like, he takes the president's power and authority and uses it to make himself immune to laws so that he doesn't have anyone interfering with his plans, okay? And I guess, for some reason, the first thing the president decided to wish for was nukes. He could have just wished for an end to the Cold War. So a bunch of nukes just magically appear around, anyway, it's a plot point that becomes important in a minute. So anyway, there also just happen to be these diagrams, like on easels, in the Oval Office at the time that Mr. Lord happens to be there. And they're illustrating these plans about like some kind of top secret satellite thing that can hijack any broadcast system around the world. And this is convenient because it'll enable Mr. Lord to grant wishes to everyone on the planet at the same time, and in doing so, take everything that he wants from anyone he wants, and basically make himself all-powerful, right? This doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because the logic of it is, Mr. Lord, he has to touch people, like, physically in order to grant their wishes, right? And they explained that the satellite thing sends out, like, particle beams that touch everywhere on the planet, including all the people. And based on this logic, because the particle beams from these satellites he would be controlling touching these people, he can grant their wishes. This is stupid because by the exact same logic, he should be able to just, like, shine a light on people because the photons he's emitting would be touching them. In fact, he wouldn't even need a light. He could just, like, the light that's reflecting off his own body and touching them would do the trick, according to the exact same logic. So he shouldn't even need the thing. Wonder Woman shows up and tries to stop Mr. Lord in the hallway. A fight breaks out, and Wonder Woman grabs this one dude's gun, ejects a round from it by, like, racking the slide. And then, in slow motion, the bullet is, like, flying through the air, and she smacks it with her hand so hard that it flies at, like, the speed of a bullet and hits a nearby vase. And this somehow causes Mr. Lord to fall over while he's trying to run away. But before Wonder Woman can catch Mr. Lord, Barbara suddenly shows up and stops her. I guess Barbara just somehow knew that she would be at the White House and knew to go there to save Mr. Lord or whatever. So, whatever. Barbara is basically betraying Wonder Woman at this point to save, Mr. Lord in order to prevent Wonder Woman from, undoing her wish or whatever. Because they're just assuming that if they, kill Mr. Lord or whatever, this will undo all the wishes that he's granted and basically set everything back to normal. That's just their assumption. At some point, it was kind of explained that Wonder Woman's powers are very gradually weakening, and this enables Barbara to beat her in a fight. Now, there's a few things about that. Okay, first of all, it doesn't make any sense because, every other time somebody was granted a wish in the movie, they ended up paying the price for it almost instantly. But for some reason, Wonder Woman losing her powers is happening extremely gradually. So as she's fighting Barbara, they seem basically evenly matched. But I guess that's their explanation of how Barbara's able to beat her. Her powers are weakening. Even though we haven't seen any sign of her powers weakening, aside from her losing her grip on the lasso, which happened immediately after she just flipped a truck with her hands. So it seems like however strong Wonder Woman is depends on the needs of the scene at that moment, where she could be strong enough to flip a truck one moment, but then a few seconds later, she can't even hold on to the lasso while carrying a couple kids in her other arm. It makes no sense. So Barbara beats up Wonder Woman and tells her to leave Mr. Lord alone, and then she and Mr. Lord escape in a helicopter. It turns out the Russians detected all the new nuclear sites that just magically popped up around the world, and they declared war because of this. So now, World War III is about to break out, so everyone's panicking in the streets. It's happened so fast that logically the news wouldn't even had time to learn about it. Because this all happens in the span of 2 minutes, but just instantly this panic in the streets. Wonder Woman and Chris Pine go down the street, leaving the White House. I don't even know where they're going. They walk down the street and they kind of stop, by a corner somewhere. And Chris Pine convinces Wonder Woman that she has to renounce her wish, essentially sacrificing him so that she can get her powers back to full strength, right? So she finally renounces her wish. All the sad music starts playing up. Wonder Woman runs down the street. She jumps up into the air, and it's this really bad green screen effect. The movie unironically uses that Adagio in D minor song from Sunshine, which was really overused a few years ago. So yeah, again, it's 2020 and they're still doing that. I don't know why they didn't just find some sad 80s song to play. That would have been more thematically appropriate, but they decided to use this overused song from this other movie. Apparently, it turns out Wonder Woman can fly now, right? She jumps up into the air and she just flies. So not only does she get her powers back, she comes back more powerful than ever before. Can I just talk about the theme for a second? At the beginning of the movie, during the prologue, when she gets disqualified from the race for taking a shortcut, the lady kind of lectures her about not taking the short path to greatness. That's the words she uses or something. So you'd think the theme would be you have to earn greatness, right? You can't just wish for it. The thing is, Wonder Woman doesn't earn anything. I mean, yeah, she sacrificed her boyfriend to get her powers back, but she already had powers in the first place. So she's just getting back what she already had with add-ons, with bonuses, because now she can fly. So, she's not earning anything. She just taking back what she already had before, that she was just kind of bored with, because she's an Amazonian and she just kind of naturally has superpowers, right? Or she's the daughter of Zeus or whatever her origin story is. Yeah, she didn't earn any of this, so it's not thematically appropriate. Anyway, We see Mr. Lord and Barbara in a helicopter. Mr. Lord explains that he's dying because his organs just started to fail after he made his wish to have wish-granting powers. Because I guess that's what the crystal took from him, his health, like when he wished for wish-granting powers, right? But he plans to get around this by granting wishes and taking organs from all the, people that he's granting wishes to, right? That's how he's gonna basically save himself. He's just gonna make himself healthier by taking everyone's health, right? He offers Barbara he's gonna give Barbara another wish, which doesn't make any sense because, again, you can only have one wish per person, right? She already made her wish. She wished to be like Wonder Woman. That's how she's so strong and powerful. That's how she has superpowers now, because she wished herself to be like Wonder Woman. She used her one wish already, but I guess now she gets a second one because the plot demands it. So she wishes herself to be a quote-unquote apex predator. And you've seen, the promotional material. She becomes Cheetah from the comics, basically. So I guess because she wished to be an apex predator, she ends up becoming a furry. She could have just as easily become a shark woman or some other animal, but I guess the forces of the universe or whatever decide to turn her into a cat. Whatever. Mr. Lord arrives at the facility, the military facility, where they have the controls for the secret satellite thing, which he didn't even know existed before he started putting his evil plan into action. It just happened to be convenient for his evil plan. Whatever. So he starts broadcasting himself to the world. So Mr. Lord tells everyone around the world to make a wish, and even though he's only broadcasting in English, I guess everyone around the world just magically understands him, and just kind of goes along with his plan, and they start wishing for things, and bad things happen. And we even see people around the world like speaking Chinese and Arabic, wishing for things. But I guess all of these people just happen to see his broadcast or hear his broadcast and know he's asking them to make wishes, and all of them just go along with it. So obviously bad things happen. You got like insurgent groups in the Middle East wishing for nukes and stuff like that. So in exchange for all the wishes made by people around the world, Mr. Lord takes their strength, power, and life force. He doesn't say health, he actually uses the phrase life force, because that's a thing, I guess. And then Wonder Woman just shows up at the military facility wearing a bird costume. And the golden armor from the hero lady in the flashback from before, she had this golden armor with wings. I guess she just happened to have this armor in her apartment for some reason. So she just shows up wearing it. She just somehow knew where to go after Mr. Lord and Barbara escaped in a helicopter so she goes to the military facility. Then Barbara shows up, and this is when we see her as Cheetah for the first time, wearing her terrible cheetah makeup and costume. She looks awful. She looks like Cats, not even like the movie Cats, like the stage play. She looks like she's wearing like a Cats costume from Broadway. So they break a bunch of stuff during the fight, the ensuing fight, and as they're like flying around in this cartoonishly over-the-top fight, breaking everything in sight. And this big electrical cable kind of like falls down and dangles above like this water. So they end up in the water, and Wonder Woman kind of holds Barbara's head under the water, and just as the electrical cable falls into the water, and it electrocutes Barbara, but somehow it doesn't electrocute Wonder Woman, even though they're both under the water. No explanation is given. Is Wonder Woman immune to electricity or something? Because I don't know if that was ever established. I guess she's like the daughter of Zeus, so maybe she is. But I don't think that was ever mentioned in this movie. I don't remember if it was ever mentioned in the previous movie. Maybe it was, I don't remember. But even if that's the case, even if Wonder Woman is somehow immune to electricity, Barbara wished herself to be like Wonder Woman, so shouldn't she also be immune to electricity? This doesn't make any sense. So Barbara gets electrocuted, but she's still alive. So Wonder Woman kind of like jumps out of the water carrying her and just leaves her on the ground, and then goes into the building to confront Mr. Lord. But Mr. Lord has made himself too powerful by granting wishes, So he's got all this wind blowing around him, right? Because every time he grants a wish, wind starts blowing for some reason. So now there's like, I guess, hurricane force winds blowing inside this building. I mean, it would have to be hurricane force because Wonder Woman is depicted as being so insanely strong that even when her powers are ostensibly weakened, she can push a truck. She can flip a truck up into the air with her hands. So if the wind was that strong, it would have been ripping the building apart. But I guess it's too strong for her to reach him. So he starts like villain monologuing and trying to get her to wish Chris Pine back to life. But Wonder Woman starts lecturing Mr. Lord about truth and stuff that kind of, in this like really clunky attempt to try to like tie it back to the theme. You know, try to tie it back to when she was being lectured as a kid at the beginning of the movie. But it turns out she wasn't actually talking to him. She was talking to everyone in the world using the broadcast equipment in there. You know, she's basically broadcasting what she's saying to the entire world. So everyone is like listening in on her, on their conversation. And while that's going on, you know, she's got the magic lasso wrapped around Mr. Lord's ankle. And this basically gives him flashbacks to when he was a kid getting abused by his father and picked on by other kids. And while this is going on, both the United States and Russia start launching their missiles at each other, so World War III is about to happen. So the magic lasso shows Mr. Lord that his kid is about to be vaporized by nukes. So in order to save his kid, he decides to renounce his wish. And at the same time, so does everyone else in the world. Everyone in the world is seeing, you know, they're hearing this broadcast. I guess everyone on the planet. Every single person on the planet who made a wish was convinced by Wonder Woman's speech to renounce their wishes. Everyone. You know, there had to be at least one person somewhere on the planet who actually wished for the world to end, right? So everyone undoes their wishes, including Mr. Lord, so everything just kind of goes back to normal. The nukes disappear, which doesn't make any sense because, remember, only the American nukes popped into existence because of a wish. Remember, the president wished these nukes into existence, and that's why the Russians launched their nukes. So the Russian nukes wouldn't disappear. The Russian nukes would still be flying at the United States. But the movie just, I guess they expect you not to think about it. Just be sad because they played Adagio in the background in one scene, and Chris Pine, whose character, his name I can barely remember, sacrificed himself. And we're just expected to feel emotions, even though nothing makes any sense. Just don't think about it. Just feel. Just feel the sad music. Don't think about anything. The movie thinks you're stupid, and you are. You are stupid if all you care about is... Jesus Christ. You have to be stupid to think this is a good movie. I'm just gonna come right out and say it. You're a moron if you enjoy this. The only way you can enjoy this movie is to laugh at it. That's how stupid it is. So, Mr. Lord runs out into a field that just happens to see his kid wandering around. And he runs up and hugs him in what's intended to be a big emotional moment, but it falls flat because this kid has appeared in like 3 scenes before now, and we barely know anything about their relationship, right? So they're attempting to make this a big emotional moment, and it completely falls flat. And that's the last we see of Mr. Lord. He just kind of disappears from the movie. We don't know if he suffers any consequences for, you know, nearly ending the world and potentially killing a bunch of people. Like, we don't find out if he goes to prison or anything. So just don't think about it. The movie doesn't want you to think, so just don't. So anyway, sometime later, it's suddenly like in the middle of winter now. We see Christmas decorations all over. And I don't know why it doesn't add anything to the scene, but Wonder Woman is just walking around and, you know, looking at all the Christmas decorations, and she happens to run into the guy that Chris Pine was possessing before. The way the scene is executed, it feels really tacked on. Like, I feel like there's no reason at all it had to be during Christmas time. I don't know. Wonder Woman, she kind of looks at this dude like she's thinking about having sex with him again, only he would be conscious this time. So she decides not to do it. So then she flies up into the air, and then the movie ends. right? The credits start rolling, but then we get a mid-credits scene where we see some woman, the hero lady from the flashback, save this kid from a falling pole. And she's played by Linda Carter, who played, you know what, she's the lady who played Wonder Woman on TV back in the 70s. And she literally winks at the camera. She actually looks right at the camera and winks. And then the movie actually ends. So that's Wonder Woman 1984. It's garbage. It's stupid. It makes no sense. The themes are incoherent. All the emotional moments fall flat because of just tonally it's all over the place. And if I didn't already know about Wonder Woman raping a dude, I would have been more offended. You know how the first Wonder Woman tried to have this theme about how good and evil are the result of people's actions and nothing is black and white? But then they undercut it at the end by revealing an evil deity was pulling the strings the whole time, and that's why World War I happened? Well, Wonder Woman 1984 doesn't even have a theme. It just pretends to by having people talk about, you know, truth at the beginning and end of the movie with little to nothing actually in the plot, actually connecting that to the theme at all. Like, almost nothing in this story actually has anything to do with truth. Even they just pay a bunch of lip service to it at the beginning and ends of the movie. And there's a lot of like goofy, stupid stuff, like when she lassos the rocket and uses it to fly like it's a cartoon. But then it tries to have like these big, unearned emotional moments. It's like if Sharknado tried to have, you know, serious scenes in it. And you can have goofy stuff in your movie if that's the tone you're going for. But then you can't expect me to cry when Chris Pine decides he doesn't want to be in the movie anymore if you're gonna do that. Either make it a stupid farcical cartoon or don't. So I see people try to like defend dumb movies like this, like, oh, who cares if the plot doesn't make sense? Who cares about logic? How'd the movie make you feel? That's more important. How a movie, whether or not a movie is emotionally satisfying is more important than if it's intellectually satisfying. You know, as if a movie can't do both, right? I'll tell you what the movie made me feel. It made me feel boredom, confusion, a little bit of disgust, and I laughed at a couple of things which I don't think were meant to be funny. That's the emotional reaction I had to this movie. It's utter schlock. One of the big problems with this movie is that it never feels like Wonder Woman is in any real danger because she's just so powerful. So there's never any like real suspense. And yeah, that's a problem with a lot of superhero movies. But just because it's a problem in other movies, that doesn't make it less of a problem in this movie. Even when we're told that her powers are weakening, she's still immensely strong. Like strong enough to flip a truck. So, even when she loses her fight with Barbara at the White House, it just feels like a fluke because they're so evenly matched. Barbara's not even like trying to kill her at that point anyway. So, it's not like her life is in danger, right? And there's the fact that she keeps like just pulling these ridiculous stunts and powers out of nowhere. Like she can lasso a rocket, which aside from just being stupid and, you know, unintentionally hilarious, which makes it impossible to take the movie seriously. She's just out of nowhere has the ability to turn things invisible. And then she can just fly suddenly, like out of nowhere. Even in a fantasy movie, you need to have at least some regard for physics, because if literally anything can happen, that undermines the tension in any action scene, because not only do they become comically farcical, but we know that the characters can be saved by just out-of-nowhere nonsense. So when I'm watching Wonder Woman fight a bunch of henchmen, I'm not wondering if she's gonna get out okay. I just end up wondering what stupid bullshit she's gonna suddenly pull to right herself out of a corner. And once you establish that Wonder Woman can lasso a bullet in mid-flight and fling it with enough force to pop a truck tire, you just end up wondering why she doesn't do that all the time. Let me just like speculate on what could have been, right? Alright, so one of the major plot points is that Wonder Woman loses her powers, right? I mean, ostensibly. It barely comes across in the movie that she's losing her powers at all, because she's still insanely powerful even as she's weakening. It would have raised the stakes considerably if she actually lost her powers completely and just became a normal person, but then still had to be a hero and save the day without her powers, right? Like if she had to figure out how to beat Cheetah or slash Barbara with her wits without using super strength and the ability to fly and her magic lasso and stuff. Like if she just had to like exploit a weakness and, you know, outsmart her, right? Wouldn't that make her a more compelling character? Like if she had to like rely on ingenuity instead of just superpowers that she just gets out of nowhere, like the ability to fly. It would have raised the stakes. It would have been like, you know, anyway. During the opening prologue, Kid Wonder Woman gets lectured about not taking the short path to greatness. They could have done a thing where she has to earn her powers back and have it tie into the theme more concretely than just having people spout these empty platitudes about truth. Like have her lose her powers like halfway through the movie or whatever, and then she has to like do something to earn her powers back and have it tie into the theme about not taking shortcuts to greatness. You know, have it make sense. But that's not what this is not what we got. Instead, they had Wonder Woman gradually weaken as the price for wishing Chris Pine back to life, even though everyone else had to pay the price instantly. So she just got her powers back the instant she renounced her wish. She didn't have to earn anything. I get that they were trying to have like a big sad moment where she has to sacrifice her boyfriend to save the world, but as I already explained, the emotion of the situation falls flat because of how cartoonishly farcical and tonally uneven the rest of the movie is. So I guess this attempt at a emotions moment, which falls flat, just comes at the expense of a story which could have been more interesting and thematically coherent. That's Wonder Woman 1984. Whatever. Like, comment, subscribe, support me on Patreon. Whatever. Bye.